Now, okay, so we're gonna start this recording now. This is gonna be one of your typical DPS classes for the Trojan horse, except for this one is specific to the Horns of the Reach patch. Because hey, we've got a patch now and everything's gone a loop, and just to kick us in the butt even more, ZeniMax decided that we're just gonna forego whatever we tested on PTS and round the numbers based off their own, well, what they think is right anyways, and what other people have tested out, and just kinda give us some really new numbers. So a lot of people are either frustrated or confused, or they don't know what they run anymore, or they're wondering if that mother sorrow of theirs is still going to be useful. So we're going to try to answer as many of those things right now, but so for first off, we're going to do this thing where we regularly get done. We're going to put off those thresholds. So what is thresholds, for those of people who are wondering? The thresholds are min and maxing numbers. So if the reason why min-maxing, I explained in ESO really quickly, is the way it works in this particular game is that while you can get more total numbers in your stat sheet, the stat sheet being that if you hit C as your default hotkey, or if you rebinded it, just open up your character stat sheet and it should show your name, your faction, but most importantly of all your stats. How much regen you got, how much maximum resources you got, so on and so forth. And so we're going to cover up again what the important resources are for you're playing stamina or magicka, and then how does penetration work, and then how much of penetration you need to worry about thereafter. So for some of you, you've already heard all this, but because this is a video that I'm going to record for those that when I'm away, or for any piece of reference or reminder. Yes, I know I should probably jot this down and write out somewhere, but these things tend to change from patch to patch. And more so worse that in Horns of the Reach there are new numbers, but I can't give you guys all the new numbers just yet because I've only just tested some of the stuff on just 3 kinds of DPS. So just be patient about it. For the meantime, we'll just treat that magicka and stamina are two totally different. They have totally different thresholds. The ones that you get minimum, ones you get maximum. It's important to understand that with the minimum, welcome user. So I think it was Hing who just entered the chat. Welcome, Hing. So with the minimum, you never want to have your minimum stats go past this point. If it ever go past this point, you're having way too much of a detriment that you're not going to be making good use of your roundup stats. And then of course you have your maximums, which you don't go past. And why is it going to go past this? Because if you're getting past all this, like I'll give you an example of what I mean here. Let's say weapon damage. Somebody would tell you on YouTube or whatever that, well, it's alright for PvP, but in PvE, it's not alright to go past, let's say, 3.8k, but now it's 4k weapon damage for a stamina character. Why is that? Well, it's because if you go past 4k weapon damage, the amount of resources that you'd have to consume from either your food, your gear, your your CP points or whatever, or your Munda stones and all those combinations and your traits to pump up that number, you're essentially losing resources that you could use for something else. So you don't want to have too little of something, and you don't want to have too much of something. So you're going to cut back if you've got too much of it, and you're going to see which of the ones that are really, really low that you can try to pump up with. And this means that you can basically play any class in the game, like a Bosmer or a Khajiit or Red Guard, well, I mean, relevant to stamina DPS in this case. And you can go ahead and try to median, put back into median the other statistics so that they don't become either overbearing or they become underwhelming. Right. So what are the thresholds? So I'm going to give stamina thresholds here first because most of the people in this room right now, they do have all stamina, and then I know a few of them do have magicka tunes, and but we'll go with that a little bit later. And yes, there are exceptions. There are really weird exceptions, like Bossman Regard tend to have really high max stam, and anybody wearing necropotence or necropotence based builds tend to have really high max magicka. So I'll mention those in a bit. And okay, so we're gonna go over the sheet first. So as we already know, maximum stamina DPS, what do they rely on? They rely on maximum stamina, weapon damage, your crit chance, and then your crit damage modifier. So before we go on, again, damage crit modifier, right, is the damage that only adds into your base damage as bonus damage. You only get when you crit. So it only applies when you have a good enough crit chance. You can't really take a look at crit damage modifiers, especially for Nightblades and Templars who have extra bonus ones, or if you have stacked a lot in CP, unless you have enough good crit chance to make use of it. And I'll also talk about an add-on later after when we go through this min-max thresholds. So the minimum threshold and maximum threshold for max stam first is somewhere between 29k to 38k. To be honest, if you can cut it lower than 36k, that's a better choice. There are some red guards builds like between two fanged snake. What is it? Twice fanged snake. Let me just link it real quick. Yes.
Jeff, my stamina is like 38.8k. Is that a bad thing?
Well, that means you let's look at the other statistics later, right? When I talk about them and see if you got one that is too low. If you have too low of one or the other statistics, then you want to bump up those. So so I'm just giving one example right now. So what about if a red guard was Spriggans? I'm just gonna link it real quick. Spriggans over a two-fang snake. If a red guard was Spriggans, well, red guard and the Bossman already have way too much max stamina to begin with. If they were two-fang snake, then they would have just, well, I mean, compared to Spriggans, they would actually be bumping up, you know, in this example, more of their weapon damage and more weapon critical in consideration to just pumping out the shit out of max stamina. So, because you already have way too much max stamina, which is not a bad thing, it's a really good thing to have overabundance of one. But you see, if you have way too much of it and you're kind of just ignoring your other statistics, like your weapon damage, your crit chance, so on and so forth, then you're not gonna perform as well because you're way too behind on all the others. And we'll get to that in a bit. So write down those numbers first. It's between 29k, and that's specific for, you know, Bretons or Argonians or whatnot who do not get any extra stam, and then all the way up to Red Guards and Bossmers who can go all the way up to 38k. But if you're sitting at 36k or 35k or 33k, especially if you're Khajiit, those are really nice round numbers. Hey Puppy Eyes. So let's go on to the next one. Well, weapon damage. Weapon damage, this patch, you're going to try to go between, this is just, the maximum number has changed. I'm not sure what is the best maximum number for now. But for now, minimum, just go for 3.2k, which is, you know, what the same it was before Homestead and Morrowind. And then you're going to go all the way up to 4k. Maybe this might change in the future, but for now 4k is just an okay number. And why 4k? Because Sharpened has been nerfed just enough that and so has crit. It's just been nerfed just enough. Okay, so just put in the scope first. We're not going to be talking, also as a disclaimer, right? We're not going to be talking about any of the PTS iterations. I've already warned you guys many times, don't look at YouTube videos that talk about builds while it's between PTS iterations. Why would you make a build on a version of the game that wouldn't even matter after the PTS is done? Don't do this to yourselves. Everybody always does it at some point, whether it's Shadow of the Hist or One Tamriel or Homestead or Morrowind. Don't put yourselves into trouble. Don't invest in something that's imaginary. The reason why PTS is because it's something for people, you know, like myself or Bob, whoever, to jump on there and test stuff to see which one is strong against the other, which is overperforming, and then, you know, you immediately kind of know which sets are underperforming. And so ZeniMax, what would they do? Well, common sense, the developers are trying to balance, right? They're always going to try to find the things that are underperforming and buff those, and going to be trying to find stuff that's overperforming and kind of nerf those. So that's particularly why the reason I passed to you guys this min and max thresholds to begin with is because you're going to try to maintain 30k DPS, and no matter what pieces of gear you put together, you want to make sure that you're within these boundaries. Alright? So maybe these boundaries just tend to change further upon time, on, you know, not so much. But as a matter of fact, you ought to be thinking about it in this way rather than thinking about what's BIS. Because so far, what's BIS? Because if developers in MMO care enough, their whole ideal will be trying to get rid of what is BIS, or at least make it so that it's operationally BIS. And yes, I know you guys may have heard this in other YouTube videos like Gil in the Road, but yes, you ought to be aiming for statistic stats that work for a particular boss, or at least well-rounded enough that you don't need to worry about your build when you go through different content. Whoever is doing DPS on the DPS dummy, please cut it out. It's giving way too much audio noise on my video. Sorry about that. So let's go on ahead to the well, I say weapon damage right just now. So we'll go over to crit chance. So for weapon crit, you want to be in particular, and I'm on the war, I'm on the stone right now, so my character sheet is kind of screwed up. So you want to be at the minimum. This is the moderate minimum, all right? When I give these numbers, you can go extremes, but they're not recommended. So you're gonna be at between 62% or 67% minimum, and I really wouldn't go past lower than 60%. And I know there are players like Lim the Rogue who go as low as 47%. But when they speak of those numbers, they're beginning to go into the area where you're talking about, you know, very specific scenarios. So I'm going to be prejudiced against those scenarios. What are those scenarios? Like vet trials on a 7-minute long fight. Like you're just rotating on a 7-minute long dummy. Think of it like that with mechanics going on. Or if you're PvPing. So which is why I don't go those as low as those numbers. Usually I keep to a numbers that's applicable for things like VMA, for VDSA, for vet trials. And that's really all I care about when I come to talk about this. If we talk about PvP, we'll talk about it another time. So I generally just try to go at 67%, and the max threshold I try to not get past is 82. But I do, and extreme thresholds that I try not to go past is 90, 93 or 94%. And because that's because I've tested going that high, and I myself don't see that much of a detriment going that high. But I've tried it on a StamBlade. But when I've tried it on a StamDPS, I've realized that going that high is really stupid. Like you actually start to lose DPS because you lose stat points elsewhere. So write these numbers down. Did anybody not pick up after those numbers that I just mentioned? Can I move on?
You said 67% for StamBlade at least?
For 67% for most stamina tunes. That's the lowest average that you should go.
I get 61%.
Okay. Because you're not Khajiit.
Yeah.
Right. It's no worries. So that's why you have way too much stam. I put a little bit more crit if I were you.
Yeah.
So it's whatever. So now let's talk about weapon damage modifiers. Now weapon damage modifiers, okay, what was that? So there's a statistic that's hidden to you in the game that you need to kind of math it out unless you... I don't even have any add-ons that is in my list right now that actually... I have stuff for penetration. I actually don't have anything for weapon damage modifiers. And that's because weapon damage modifiers... Go ahead and do the test, but do the test on the... bring the dummy away. So the weapon damage, crit damage modifiers, you want to make sure that with these, the lower you go, only if your crit chance is not as good. But you want to try to maintain as well. So the crit damage modifier, and oh, by the way, the reason why you can't calculate this, I failed to mention just now because Bob was interrupting. The reason why you can't calculate it is because it depends on your rotation as well. Because of what Trap Beast, if you're getting guard on you with the minor force morph, and then for things like if you're gonna get Warhorn, are you wearing twice 1 star? Are you using Shadowmundus, so on and so forth. So crit damage modifiers really depend on those. So an example would be that how do you know you want to swap into your Leviathan's gear? Then if you're in your Leviathan's gear and you're getting way too much crit because you're using double daggers, you don't want to use Axe, for example, you swap over to Shadowmundus, especially if you're Khajiit. It's one example of how you keep within min-max thresholds. So what if let's talk about how much is the minimum and maximum for that. The minimum, so I'll talk about 150% is the base when you crit of your total damage. So 50% is the damage bonus you get from crit. 150 is the total. So I'm gonna use the total, all right? So the damage you do when you crit, the minimum should be 100. For this is for STEM, 175%. Okay, if you guys wrote that down, and then the maximum you're gonna get, you don't want to go past, is 220%. And this for STEM. STEM goes really high, and only only Stamina Nightblades with twice spawn star and Stamina Templars with twice spawn star do actually go that high, and they get that high with Warhorn. And you want to count the Warhorn. Warhorn actually gives major force, so major force is 30%, right? So you want to include that as well, because if you so the minimum I gave, by the way, does not cover Warhorn. The 220% that counts Warhorn in. Okay, just to be specific here. All right, now I've already given those numbers. Now let's talk a little bit about where is it do you want to try to manage, or at least we'll go through one person here. Nico-kun, maybe you can tell me your max stam, your weapon damage, your crit chance, and then how much crit damage modifier do you think you normally have. And it's easy to check. You just check precise, and you remember that trap beast is 10%. Hey, you sir.
Okay, wait up. So right now I'm using my old set, so I'm trying to juggle and see which one's better. But right now for my Twiceborn Star set, I have 85% critical. But
Okay.
on the newer set, I had like 72% weapon critical.
Critical chance.
Critical chance, yeah.
Yeah.
Weapon damage is so shit though for the old set. It's like 2,674.
Wait, no. Wait, is that again? When I mention this, I also need to mention weapon damage. The one I mentioned is after your weapon and spell damage proc.
Okay, and then that's
And major brutality. So
that's about 3,500 weapon damage.
Okay, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good.
My maximum stamina is around 37,497. This is my old set.
Yeah.
New set was 38,800.
That's pretty high. Okay.
For my new set, however, I had a weapon damage of around 4,500, which was crazy, but
Yeah,
it did work. Yeah. But
if it works for you, it works for you.
Oh yeah, it did. But for this set, the physical penetration is only like 3,217. For the new set, I had like 6,800.
6,800 of what again? Of weapon damage.
Physical penetration.
Oh, physical penetration. Okay, so we don't talk about physical penetration first, and why is that, hey user? So, let me just talk about penetration and why is that important. And thumbs up if you're late. For the people who are late, don't worry. I chose to do a rough recording of this, and for the meantime, just try to keep silent unless you got a question. Just pop in, just interrupt me. It's fine. Okay, so what about penetration? Because I talked about everything else, I didn't talk about penetration. And Nico-kun, my voice is echoing through your speakers. Yeah. Okay. So, weapon penetration. Now, weapon penetration is a really funny one. Just now I talked about min and max thresholds, right? How much your max stam, your weapon damage, your crit chance, and all that. If possible, in a trial setting, you don't want to have any penetration on your setup. So I believe a lot of people right now confused. What do you mean you don't need any penetration on your setup? If your group is doing things right, your tanks, your healers, and the designated DPS support will be doing all of the penetration for you. Okay? Now I ask you this. If you have 4 DPS in trial setting, let's just say you have 4 DPS in trial setting, do you think that everybody should be using Two Fang Snake? Or shouldn't there be somebody who would be just using Thunder Flame and Atlas Gate? So let's just do a bit of math. What is Two Fang Snake? So Two Fang Snake, Twice Fang Snake, sorry about that. So Twice Fang Serpent or Spriggans. I'm gonna link those two again. So we're talking about these two sets right here. I know I linked them earlier. So one gives, let's see here. What is this? 4,300, and another one gives 3,450. Okay, and then let's add up Thunder Flame and Nightmare's Gaze. And if you guys noticed, these sets were never nerfed. right? So why weren't this set 7 nerfed? So we won't talk about, at least in this video and right now in this class, I won't talk about what I think that are the agendas of the developers, because that's discriminative and I'm just going to keep that aside. But for right now, if you've noticed, what the developers are trying to tell us is that they are not nerfing penetration that has to do with a group setting. If you guys notice, Thunderflame and Nightmare's Gaze were practically untouched. In fact, these two sets were only buffed. Right? So, let me totally remount the Discord. So, it should come across pretty clear that, you know, let's add up the numbers over here. Numbers Gaze is 2.5k, 2.58, whatever. So we just add the numbers, it's what, 280, so we just, 1,000, you get 6,000 over here. You get 6,000 penetration compared to your measly 4,000 or 3.5k that you get from either Spriggans or Twice Fang Snake. So don't it make sense to have one of the StamDPS go as a Thunderflame and Nightmare's Gaze, and then the other 3 DPS just go as, you know, Twice Born Star, just rack up Teeth and go Shadow and just rack up all the other stats? Because then you have the other 3 DPS just plummet the face out of the boss. You get more group DPS overall if one person decides to go as the support DPS. And by the way, support DPS doesn't mean you won't be getting more than 50k in a trial setting. I've had to wear Thunderflame and Nightmare's Gaze on my Stamina Nightblade before and on the Stamina Templar before. My Stamina Templar peaked at 47 when my rotation was pretty whatever. Like I only just started that character, and my Stamblade's rotation actually hit past 50k. I mean, it wasn't really good, like it wasn't past 55k, but my point is that you don't actually need to worry about, I'm wearing Nightmare's Gaze, I'm losing DPS so that everybody gets buffed. No. You're buffing your whole group, and you're buffing yourself as well. That's what's important. And so why am I mentioning this? If everybody wears 2 Fang Snake in a group setting and everybody else has 2 Fang Snake or Spriggans, it's essentially like everybody is not getting, you know, not a real buff. You're essentially as if you're playing solo. You're not really buffing each other. You're not getting the max of your DPS. So you want to always be prioritizing the min-maxing threshold of what I said: maximum stamina, your weapon damage, your crit chance, and your crit damage modifier before you even begin to think about penetration. Let the group worry about your penetration. If you're doing VMA with the character, however, and if you're just doing, you know, vet dungeons with 4 DPS or whatever, then yes, you need to have a setup specifically for that as well. And yes, I know that there is a beginner setup, right? Because at some point everybody has got to farm pledges, you know, have to be, you know, doing dungeons with other people. You need to play with other people, get practice with them. You know, you want to do for VDSA, which is for 4 people, you might not get the amount of penetration like you would in a group. Because in a trial setting, you have people to do these things for you. And if you guys have started to notice, in the last couple of times when we've defeated Hell Ra, it was always with at least, you know, 4 stamina DPS. It's 3 or 4 stamina DPS. The last one we had like 6 stamina DPS or something, 6 or 7. And there's a group photo to prove it. You can just look. We actually had 2 stam DKs and we had 2 stam Nightblades. So there was a lot of vigor coming from heals. Everybody's healing themselves, and you get a lot of single target DPS, right? So you want to have 2 different builds. One is with your trials group, of the people you're playing with, or if your 4-man group has somebody running Nightmare's Gaze and Thunderflame, and you want to be having, you know, another setup specifically for if you're the only stamina player in the group. Okay. So before I go to the magic, I'll, you know, talk about a little bit about stamina group compositions and stuff like that, and how you min-max your stats towards that, and Wonderstones and blah 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 traits. Anybody any questions? Nobody? Okay, I'm going to close that window then. So let's talk a little bit right now about the traits, Wonderstones, and how is the different setups going to be like if you're working in a group and if you're solo or doing VMA, or if you're doing let's talk about regular dungeons first. Because regular dungeons, let's just treat it as if you're flying solo. Just always think of it that if you're the only StamDPS, because that's basically the sum of the situation, or if you're with a group of StamDPS. There's only these two situations, all right? So if you're the only StamDPS, right, you want to have a gold mark on the penetration, also I'll mention about it, would be if your class has major fracture accessible to you, you only want to hit at about, honestly, I don't even have that much. I only have about 3k right now. Oh, whoops, that's the wrong setup. I forgot this. You want to have penetration that is about, I'd say 5 to 7k. You can go 8k, 9k, maybe even 10k you want, but I honestly think that's over pushing it. But yeah, I'd say about 5 to 7k would be good in penetration if you're working alone, if you have major fracture. If you don't have major fracture, you need to try to reach 8 to 9k. Alright, so which means all the stamina night blades and stamina decays, you've heard me say the number, 5 to 7k. If you are, and this is again playing alone, if you're a stamina Templar or a stamina sword, sorry to you guys, but you guys need to kind of reach in a little bit higher because you don't have major fracture. Or just always play a tank, or with somebody with major fracture. And that's why, you know, playing as a Sork and all that, stamina Sork, you need to be thinking about those things if you're going to be maxing properly for those. Now, let's talk about if you're in a group. And then we'll talk about traits in a bit, because the penetration in terms of a group setting, generally, let's kind of sum up the numbers a little bit. So I'll link this thing over on chat, and of course, yes, I know the numbers have kind of changed, not for all of it, but some of it. Let me link the where is it? Where is it? No, that's my video games. Where is it? Penetration. Wait, oh, no, that's my more document. Man, where's the penetration chart that I put in here earlier? It's kind of disappeared. Okay, never mind. I'll link the penetration later after in the chat later, once I figure out where it went. But there's a penetration chart specifically that I'll put up. And so it helps you kind of figure out what the group would need and how much penetration you need from the whole group. So you guys can slowly start to think about, you know, especially for Nick who's playing a tank, right? Or anybody else who, should you read crushes, how much would be crushes out time if somebody running Alkosh, how much penetration would you lose? And generally the more physical penetration you lose, you want to be thinking about, you know, whether you should think about just changing to a Magica DPS or having somebody, you know, just if you're playing stamina anyways, just go over and just put on Spriggans or Two Fang Snake. Okay, let's talk about traits first and Motherstones. So with Haunts of the Reach, a lot has changed in the way that traits work and Motherstones work. And a lot of people get really conniving about it, like thinking that Sharpened are really super weak now or something, or that Lover is, you know, what you should go to. You should stack Pan, should not stack Pan. Generally, I'm not going to change. To tell you guys the truth, I did a DPS test earlier, and you guys saw the data. So I'm just, for the video's reference sake, I'm just gonna scroll up in the freaking Discord again. I'm just gonna click on the whatever it was earlier. Where was it? Oh, yep, just there we go. So if you guys scroll up to the part where I go to my stem Night Blades, I'll link it again for everybody. Hold on, copy link. So this was my Stamina Night Blades rotation DPS parse earlier. So you guys can see that I went from 35 to 37k, okay, and if you look through all of that, I lost approximately about the 33k. Just kind of ignore it. It's actually 34k, and even then, I really lost only about 2.3k to 1k DPS overall. I didn't really lose a lot of DPS. Again, this is me just using, what am I using now? I'm using 2 Sharpened. I did not put my poison damage onto my infused or whatever. I just have 2 Sharpened. I have none horn, no bow. I've not changed anything about my setup. I've not changed the precise or anything, right? I'm still using my Kovacs Gladiators, no monster set. You guys know what I mean. So let me take a screenshot of my superstar real quick. For those who are wondering what the heck is Jeff running when he was doing the freaking parse, we'll just go ahead and be transparent about it and just kind of link it pretty casually to you guys. Just give me a second. Where's the okay? There's Discord. There's the oops. There it is. Let me link it here. There you go. So what I'm wearing for that setup, I'm wearing specifically. And I can tell you that Nightblades have always been kind of behind StamDPS in some of the other stamina DPS in terms of group buffed. It's just that self-buff, they tend to be pretty high. So because I already come with Major Fracture and it's already good at single target, I just decided I use this setup specifically for VMA. Okay, just to be clear. Now I already know my way around VMA, so I don't need that many heals, which is why I'm using Spriggans. So I use 5-piece Vicious Ophidian, what is it? Using 5-piece Spriggans. I'm no monster helm, no monster set really, my Maelstrom bow, and then Gladiators weapons. And you can see my champion points and everything, and I do have quite a lot of points into, what is that called again? Piercing. Oh no, yeah, piercing is actually only 14 points into it. Physical penetration, which I probably should increase around this patch, but I'm too lazy to do that right now. My whole point of showing you guys this thing is not to say, oh, this is a setup you need to go to over 30k. My setup is the reason my point is showing you guys this is to say that this is the setup that I've been using before and after. I mean, now I know right now my superstar says Warrior Mundas, but half of my DPS parses was with Warrior and half of it was with Thief, and I didn't see much of a difference really. So I don't think it's that big a deal. Like with my Warrior Mundas, I saw kind of a decrease in my critical chance, and so my DPS was sometimes lower, my DPS was sometimes higher. Oh my god, Garfield is some indie games thing. So anyways, not that much of a DPS loss. In fact, presumably if you put your precise in the right order, you in solo DPS you'll probably just get about the same or maybe even a little bit more, but I really doubt it's going to be incredibly a lot more. It's just going to be a little bit more. And by the way, good news of course for any Nightblades, any Magic Custom Nightblades, you guys got buffed pretty much to make up for the losses, especially those on Stam, which is fine on the execute I mean. So let's move on a little bit. Let's
one
begin.
second, Jack.
Yep.
I just wanted to say, I know your Spriggans and Vicious Ophidian is good, but earlier I ran with Nightmother's Gaze, Vicious Ophidian, and Veladrift, and I got 35k, so you don't even need Spriggans to have good DPS.
Yeah, really don't. I have to be honest too, my rotation really wasn't that great. Like I just came in, just did 4 rotations, and I just got off like 4-5 rotations. I really couldn't care that much. I wasn't planning to sit at my computer for more than an hour doing DPS tests, or even more than 20 minutes, honestly. I was just kind of reading through stuff and just casually talking to people too. So, not really that important. Like, and my bar setups, I don't think is optimized for single target DPS either. Willis 1 is probably a lot more than mice. That's pretty much it. Okay, so we're gonna move on. Now we're gonna talk about a little bit more on Magicka DPS. By the way, any questions from those running Stam? Because Stam is pretty obvious. You just have whether you're in a group or you're not in a group. It depends on the penetration you're gonna give. You're gonna get, or So if you're getting penetration, just be playing with things. Oh, and one more thing. In terms of penetration, always remember that not all of the bosses are freaking 18.2k resistances, alright? Not all of the bosses are that way. In fact, if some of the bosses like the Mad Architect or whatever, I need to test this again, but I remember testing it one time, they only have 12k resistances. So if you're wearing for more than 12k resistance, you don't over penetrate. If you hit past that number, that statistic that you have in your character roster is useless. It's completely useless. So don't stack pack. I always go for something that's a little bit subpar. Like even for whatever patch that was before, I never have my own penetration past 13k or 15k. Maybe I choose either around that number. And that was with the sharpen that we used to know. Okay? So the way, and by the way, in terms of group DPS, technically everybody got buffed. Alright, in terms of a trials, it's just that alone you're not gonna be as not gonna have as much penetration anymore. Small whoop. Okay, so no more questions on STEM. I'm gonna move on to Magica, okay? So I'm gonna stop the recording here. I'm gonna restart it. Just so it doesn't get too long.